Yo guys, welcome back to another video. I wanted to make a predictive tier list for the post-ban meta for OP10 in the West. So that is going to include bans of Raigo, Moria, Ice Age, and Jinbei. All four of those cards are going to be banned for this format in the West. Over here in Japan, we played through OP10 with all of those cards legal and able to use them. And it was, in my opinion, I think it's going to be a completely different meta. I think a lot of things are going to be different. Not saying that like Dofi and Lucci are just going to be like completely gone, but I do think there's going to be a lot of stuff that's different from the meta that we had. And I love making these types of videos, especially when it's like for a new meta that like I didn't already play through. So just, yeah, please take everything I say with a grain of salt. Check the end of the video because sometimes I change my opinions on things, and what I'm saying at minute 5 isn't always what it ends up being at minute 25, you know. But yeah, let's just have some fun, make a little tier list. I'll give you guys my opinions on what I think some of the new changes are going to be, and that's it. So let's jump in and let's get started. All right, to quickly go over the tiers, I have 1, 1.5, 2, and 3. I'll just say off rip, I don't think there are any best decks in format for this meta. So there's not going to be like, there's no tier 0. I don't even think this is the best in format. It's unfortunate, but I think a lot of these tiers are going to be kind of unordered in the way of like within that tier. I don't really have a strict ordering for a lot of stuff, but we'll see what we can do as we go, if we can make any more concise, concrete kind of judgments here. But let's start off. These are the meta contenders in my opinion. If I'm forgetting a deck or something, I apologize. I went through them all and I'm pretty sure I got most of the decks. Like some of these probably shouldn't even be on here, but I'm throwing them in there. Let's start off with Yamato, my favorite leader. Yamato, just with the uptick of Shanks and some other decks, it's a little rough for Yamato, I'm not gonna lie. Yamato struggles into a lot of 5-life leaders, including Shanks. I think you can make a build that does pretty well into Shanks, but I don't think that type of build does well into like almost the rest of the meta completely. Like anything that revolves around an 8-cost kid is never strong against Shanks. He just has a lot of tools to get rid of stuff like Higunojo with Ben Beckman. He's a very tanky leader, so he'll just take the first like leader swing and then can survive the rest of the game very easily. Yes, you do have a great matchup into Teach, so if Teach really comes up to the top and is being played by a lot of people, Yamato will be a good counter pick. But that alone is just not enough in my opinion, and I love Yamato, and I hate to say it, but I'm gonna put Yamato at tier 3 for now. Dofi, I think Dofi probably stays 1.5. Like getting hit with no Jinbei like sucks for sure, but I don't think Dofi really falls off until blue purple, and honestly green purple. Let me just grab him here. Like green purple, he's gonna be kind of like the gatekeeper that kind of stops a lot of other strong leaders that are going to be coming up. Like a lot of leaders that have a good time in OP10, I think green purple Luffy's going to kind of come in and ruin the fun for them, so that'll be fun to see. But I'm going to put him at 1.5 for now. That might change, so we'll see. I think Zoro is very strong, but I think he's kind of just 1.5 for now. I don't really see him, like one thing I want to kind of reiterate, and I'll say it multiple times, is like the 1.5 and tier 1 kind of leaders are going to depend a lot on what leader stands out in tier 1. So like for example, if Teach is really strong and there's a ton of Teach, Zoro stonks go up, and Zoro could even become tier 1. Like it's that kind of a thing here. But for now, I'm going to kind of try and keep it in a very relative sense, so I'm gonna put him at 1.5 because I do think he's strong. Buffs in like the mole pistol and just Lucci losing Ice Age and Moria to kind of get those extra late game combos off for defensive plus offensive measures, I think definitely put Zoro in a little bit of a better spot. Teach, I think Teach is tier 1. I think we've kind of already seen that. If you watched like Eggman's tournament that he ran, I think it was just like yesterday as of recording this video, but a lot of Teach. This was kind of to be expected. 5-cost Kuzan's a broken card, and even with other decks that kind of contest Teach, he still is just really strong. And I think just even Dofi getting nerfed too just made him even stronger in my opinion. I think he's gonna be hovering around tier 1 or like end of tier 1, or maybe drop off to 1.5 for a minute if there are enough counter picks kind of coming after him. But for me, he's probably gonna be tier 1 for like all of OP10. Red Green Law, I think I'm gonna put in the spice. He's just a spicy little boy, and this, you know, you could never really count this leader out, and I think he can do a lot of really cool things. He does get more of a buff in EBO2, which is why I'm probably not gonna put him in any of the tiers. I just think he's like one of my choices for a cool spice leader. Smoker, I think, is tier 2. I think losing Moria hit Smoker pretty hard, but I think losing Ice Age might have hit him even harder, to be honest, because Smoker could kind of still get by with like Tashigi and you know, 9-cost Kaido, but just losing searchable Ice Age just, I think, hurts him a lot until EBO2 when he gets a little bit of a buff with like 7-cost Sengoku. I don't know. I don't see him being too much of a powerhouse at the moment, so I'm going to keep him in tier 2. Bonnie, I know, so like when the bans got announced, everyone's like, Bonnie's best deck in format, and like, yeah, I think Bonnie became in a better position, probably is better off for it, but I don't think she's best deck in format. I do think she's like tier 1, 2, 5, or 1 at times. It really depends. Like, again, if Teach is super heavy in the meta, it's bad for Bonnie, because people are teching 4-cost Shiryu for like the more aggro matchups and stuff, and that card hurts Bonnie. Bonnie gets caught in the crossfires hard from that one, because that one destroys. If we want to go on curve, get first, play Tashigi, Smoker, Hody, like our kind of strongest curve that we can play, all they need is a Shiryu on curve, and a lot of people are running between 2 to 4, a lot of them running at least 3 or 4, so it's not hard for Blackbeard to have a Shiryu on their forward on turn and just KO Tashigi. And if they KO Tashigi and then can KO the subsequent like 5 costs that we're going to play the next turn, it's almost game over right there. As crazy as that sounds, it's just GG's, bro. You just scoop. It's kind of crazy. So but there are things that Bonnie can do. You can run 4 5-cost Smokers, 4 Hody, 4 Zoros, and like super tech against Teach. But at the end of the day, even if you're fully teched for Teach, I think it's at least a slightly unfavored matchup. So yeah, that's going to be something that really, really matters. And talking about things that really matter, let's put Shanks up here too. I'm not sure where I would put Shanks. Like, Shanks is so weird. He's such a weird polarizing leader because he's very straightforward. People love playing him. Shanks is like the OG like yellow Katakuri, but just in red, right? Like, it's a strong deck. It has weaknesses. It loses to stuff. It has inconsistencies at times depending on how you build him, but like, he just consistently is strong for people because he's just a powerful on curve deck, right? That is like not super hard for people to like get the hang of. I do think there's a lot of intricacies to Shanks. I'm not saying he's like the easiest leader to play, but like at a base level, he's a very simple leader and he's very simply strong, and there's not a lot of hard choices. If you have the cards that you need, there's not a lot of hard choices you have to make each turn. And in that regard, you know, you could say the same about like Yamato. Like, if you just, you know, people think like there's certain Unga Bunga leaders or certain like on curve leaders where it's like not hard. You know what you need to do, right? But there are always intricacies there, and I think there are different types of builds. I do think Shanks really, I don't think people are admitting it enough, but I think Shanks struggles pretty hard in the Teach, especially if a lot of people are they started out kind of doing some aggro builds, but I think they're leaning back towards the KO builds for Shanks. And I actually think the more heavy KO you are, the worse your Blackbeard matchup is. You're gonna be starting, like, if you're fully KO teched, you're gonna be losing as much as Bonnie is basically to Teach. Maybe a slightly better matchup. But if you're running heavy aggro, then you have a better shot into Blackbeard. But then you, like, Bonnie loves an aggro Shanks build because it's so much easier for her to deal with, and the matchup then at that point kind of becomes like 50-50 if they're running the 9-cost Shanks, right? So there's all these weird intricacies that are happening between, like, it's not really a triangle format, but it's like, you know, it's a very polarizing matchup format, which is I know some people don't like it. I personally kind of like that type of meta a little bit more. But yeah, I'm gonna keep him in tier 1 right now. I do think there's times where any of these 3 leaders could drop off to tier 1.5, which is like kind of weird, and I know that's like not great for building a tier list, but it's just kind of the truth in my opinion. Blue Nami, I think, is like a tier 3. Unfortunately, just with like Blackbeard probably being pretty prevalent, it's a hard matchup. And then with aggro decks kind of chasing after Teach in the tier 1.5 and 2 metas, I think Nami's just going to struggle a little bit. Rebecca, I think, is tier 2. Definitely a cool deck, very, very strong. We had higher hopes for her over here in the East for OP10, but she couldn't quite pull through. Green Purple Doflamingo, I'm going to put him at Spice because I don't know where to place him. Like, he legit could be like a 1.5. He just has this weird like consistency that he needed, like with the purple Dofi card or Don Quixote cards that kind of came out in OP10. But I'm gonna put him as Spice because I'm not quite sure. Betty, I want to put her at like the top of Spice because I actually think Betty is gonna be here just because this is pretty biased, I think, from me too, because I'm in OP11 right now where Bella Betty is like tier 1 just because she beats Blue Purple Luffy like 70-30. So I have like a weird bias going on where like we can see how strong she is against certain things. The only problem is that she actually, when Teach has like Liberation, and if the Teach player really knows the matchup and is patient, I think Teach can beat Betty. I don't think it's oddly enough, I don't think it's like as favored for Betty against Teach as it is against something like Blue Purple Luffy. So because of that, I'm probably going to keep her in the Spice. I'm going to put her at the very top of Spice because in certain pockets of the meta, I think she could be really strong. The only problem is she struggles against stuff like Bonnie, and it's weird. It really depends on your build for Shanks, but Shanks can handle aggro stuff sometimes, but he struggles at times too. Like Zoro is really strong against Shanks with certain builds. It really just depends on each player's build. Enel, I think without Raigo, he's just chilling. He's like not that strong. Because now he has bad matchups into like, I mean, he's probably going to handle the mid-tempo aggro decks pretty well. He's going to die to Teach. He's going to struggle against Bonnie. And now without Raigo, I think he just loses to Shanks too. So I'm probably going to put him in tier 3. That could change. There might be some Enel players out there who can do better. I honestly think he has like a little bit better standing in OP11, as crazy as that sounds. Moria, I think, is a cool, fun sleeper pick. Maybe the cool black deck that I think does well into some of these other aggro decks. And I don't know, with the right text, like maybe you can do well into Teach. He had a little bit of a renaissance in OP10 for us over here in Japan, so that was fun to watch. Let's move on. Perona, we'll put Perona up in here. That made me tier 2. You know, I know a lot of people love Perona. It's a good cope deck. I love Perona too. She's really cool and really fun, but I don't know how strong. Actually, probably gonna keep her in tier 3. We'll put her towards the top of tier 3. I don't know. We'll have to see the results and the list for this, but yeah, not really sure. Blue Purple Luffy or Black Purple Luffy. Sorry. Probably a tier 3 deck just until the list gets cracked. Like losing Moria, I think. It's like a blessing in disguise. I've actually talked to some friends that play this deck in OP11, and they're like, you know what, like losing Moria was the best thing for this deck because now people just like have like been forced to find other ways to play it and like play around the meta and stuff. And I think that's true for a lot of leaders. That I think a lot of people are just counting things out, not even just like the main suspects like Lucci and Enel and stuff like that. I think there are other leaders that are probably a little bit more sleeper picks than people might think. Reiju. Reiju is kind of hard. I think Reiju might be like the tier 2 gatekeeper for me. She seems really strong, and this is another one where like I could be wrong. We just need to see some results, and then she jumps up to like tier 1.5 or something like that. And Reiju's another leader that has like very devoted players, and when you have very devoted players like that, you get really good players on Reiju and people that have been playing Reiju for a really long time. And if there's any way to make her work, they will make it work. So shout out to you guys, and I'll be waiting for your results. But for now, I'm going to keep her at tier 2. Boa, I think, is a sneaky little tier 1.5 just because she has a decent enough matchup into Blackbeard. Like if Bonnie doesn't have Tashigi, it's pretty much GG's. And then depending on the Shanks build, she has like a decent enough. If they're running the like 1-cost law blockers and stuff and can kind of see their removal on time and then get out like a 10-cost Kaido or something, I think she can handle Shanks as well. It's she's a very well-rounded leader in this meta, but doesn't do spectacularly well into any one particular thing. Lucci, I think, is going to go on the end of tier 1.5 for me, just because I feel both ways, where like people playing Lucci, it's a little bit of cope, but it's also not, because he's just a really strong leader. Like he's had a little bit of a comeback even in OP11 with people just like spamming 10 cost Kuzons and beating blue purple Luffy. But OP11 I think is slightly different because there's so much aggro in the meta, and Lucci is always good into decks like Zoro and Bello Betty. But because like our only real super true aggro swarm deck right now that's at the top is kind of like Zoro and Dofi-ish, I think that Lucci doesn't have that enough like great matchups. Like you're definitely still losing to Teach, and I think Teach is just going to see a lot of play, at least at the very start of the meta. So I can't see Lucci doing that well. But Lucci does do really well into Shanks, does do really well into Bonnie. But when you lose Ice Age and Moria, I think if the Bonnie and Shanks player are good enough and they have one or two techs or one or like, you know, see enough cards that are good into the matchup, then it's going to be hard. Like if the Shanks player is running 5 cost Ace, even 5 cost Marco, and they see like additional rush on top of that, I think you can beat a Lucci. Obviously if the Bonnie player just plays it smart, if they can't immediately get rid of a Tashigi that we play down or something, that snowballs, and then Bonnie just comfortably can win from there. But there's always the old tactics of like kind of just going a little aggressive with stuff like Hody, using 9 cost Shanks to get rid of their stuff like Jack, or even a 10 cost Kuzan that might come down. There's ways that all these leaders have to beat Lucci. So we'll see. But he has decent matchups into almost everything besides Blackbeard, so I think that puts him in a pretty good position. Maybe I'll put him like slightly above Boa here. All right, let's keep moving. Vegapunk, I don't know where I think he should actually be, because this is weirdly kind of spicy, because he has a good Agropunk has a good matchup into Blackbeard, like pretty decent, but can struggle into Bonnie and can struggle into Shanks. Good matchup into Dofi, but can struggle into Lucci, and Boa is kind of like 50-50 in my opinion. Really depends on just if they see their events and like multiple of them in time. So because of that, I'm not really sure where he should be. So if I'm not quite sure, I'm probably gonna just keep him safely here in something like tier 3, but he's definitely like got potential, right? Marco, I think Marco definitely has more potential in OP11, and I don't love just comparing things back to back like that, but I'm gonna keep him in tier 2. I think he has like some potential, like really cool things that he can do with his leader and just like decent matchups. I do think he struggles into Teach. Even if you see Red Rocks, and if you play Red Rocks, it can kind of struggle into Teach. Good matchup into Bonnie, but even Bonnie can kind of just like, you know, if we have the protection down, or if we get Hody and 9 cost Shanks down, like Marco can really struggle just because he's a 4-life leader. So he's kind of like Lucci here, where he's like, or Boa, sorry, where it's like you don't have amazing super favored matchups, but you're like pretty decent all around with only a few unfavored matchups. I'll probably throw him a bone. I'll throw him a bone and keep him in tier 2 for now, but we'll see what happens. Lim, I'm not a very big Lim believer. I know she can be strong. I kind of want to reserve 1.5 for like the other leaders that I really believe in. So I'm probably gonna keep her in tier 2. That's not to say she's bad. I think she's good, but Lim is a very, you know, a pretty one-trick pony just by design, which is unfortunate, and why I've never really gravitated towards her, because it's like, if your best main game plan is just ramp to Zoro, like that's kind of what you have to play around. And I don't know, I'm not the biggest Lim stanner, so maybe I'm putting her too low, not rating her highly enough, but that's just my opinion. Yellow Green Law, I love this leader. I think he's awesome. I'd probably put him, man, I don't know, I want to put him somewhere on tier 2. I'll put him here for now. Really good, but again, like hard matchup into Bonnie, hard matchup into Teach. Lucci can be rough. Boa can be rough. Yeah, man, I don't know. I'm sorry. I think it's just like it's like Yamato, where it's like you should be higher, but because of the way the meta has shifted, because of the bans, actually like screwed them over, and now they're lower than they probably should be. But love the leader. I think it's still really good, and put him here. Yellow Kid, probably just put him with Yellow Green Law. These two are weirdly like brothers in the meta, where like, I mean, Yellow Kid is decent. Honestly, I think Yellow Kid would maybe be in a better position if the bans were still in effect, to be honest. But like a hard matchup into Lucci and Black in general, without Ice Age, it does give him a little bit of a better spot, but still struggles into Teach, struggles into Bonnie, can struggle into Shanks. But I do think Kid normally actually has a pretty decent matchup into Shanks. But then, you know, just enough like not super favored matchups at the top for me to put him up any higher. Red Green Smoker. This is hard. Red Green Smoker could be tier 1, but I think he goes here at the very top of tier 1.5. Man, this is a hard one. This is a hard one. You know what? I'll put him here at tier 1 maybe. Oh, there's one more leader. There's a leader that I'm forgetting. Sorry. I had to put Purple Luffy in the list because he's one that I forgot. I think I'm going to put Red Green Smoker here at tier 1.5. Just because Red Green Smoker can abuse ACOS Kid, and it's very, very strong. Once EBO2 comes, again, once this boy gets up here, then Red Green Smoker stocks go up, and I think Smoker will shift around 1 and 1.5. Red Green Smoker is also like 1.5, has been tier 1 and 1.5 throughout OP11 just because of the good matchup into Blue Purple Luffy, but I think it's just not strong enough consistently into enough other matchups to where I would like, if again, Teach screws everything up. It's really crazy because like I do think Red Green Smoker has a decent matchup into Teach, but honestly I don't think it's as good as a lot of people think. And I think like ACOS Kid helps with a lot of these other generic matchups, but sucks against Shanks, is good against Bonnie, sucks against Blackbeard. So it's like, man, it's really hard. So if you just go the full aggro route, then you have a better shot. Like if you run 5-cost Luffy instead of Kid and you have 4 Hodies and you just run the, you know, 4 Smoker package, then you might have a better matchup into Shanks. You have a worse matchup into Bonnie, and you might have a better matchup into Blackbeard, but it's kind of the same thing where it's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. This one I could see shifting between 1 and 1.5, but I'm probably going to keep him as the gatekeeper at 1.5. Let's move on. Red Purple Luffy I think has some chutzpah. I think he could be a good leader, but I'm just not quite sure, so I'm going to put him at tier 2 here. Green Uta I think is spice. I think she's spicy because she does have a decent matchup. And you know what? No, actually I think I have to put her at like the end of 1.5. Just because she's been a little bit of a sleeper, and shout out to the people who kind of have been cooking with her the past couple weeks to show how she does have a good matchup into Shanks and a decent enough matchup into Blackbeard. I do think Bonnie is slightly favored in that matchup. Yeah, and she obviously struggles against stuff like Lucci, can struggle against Boa. Just enough like weird mid-tier matchups that aren't that great to where I don't think I could put her any higher. But I mean, it's kind of crazy if you're putting Uta up here, because I do think she has like a decent matchup into a lot of these, especially if you're running Hody or 8-cost Kid. Like you're probably running 9-cost Shanks just because it's like a searchable 9-cost Shanks, which is awesome. The deck is really hard to balance and build though if you're going to try and incorporate some of the other things like Hody and Kid, but I do think there's sauce. I do think there's some sauce here. I'm probably gonna this might be one of my more hot takes, but I'm gonna put her in 1.5 just because the very current like meta that we kind of are seeing right now, I think she's decent. Usopp, here's another contentious one. I'd probably put Usopp like right here. I think Usopp is decent, like has a good enough matchup into Bonnie, but honestly I think it's just like whoever gets first is favored. Has like an okay, Usopp is kind of like Red Green Smoker, where like they have an okay matchup into Blackbeard, but I don't know if it's enough to say it's favored. Depending on your build, I think you could get it to kind of 50-50, but it really comes down to more so like if Usopp can see his pieces rather than if Teach can see his pieces for XYZ, right? So in that situation, I tend to think that like it's hard to call anything favored in that situation, but I do think he has a really good matchup into stuff like Lucci, especially with the Ice Age. Good into Dofi, decent into Red Green Smoker. I do think Usopp struggles into Shanks. I'm sorry. I don't think Usopp has a very good matchup into Shanks. We've gone through it here in Japan where like people like figured out how to beat Shanks with Usopp, and then Shanks players kind of just adjusted to that, and then it became favored for Shanks again. So I have a feeling that might happen again in the West as well. And I do think if a Bonnie player really knows what they're doing, I don't think it's an unfavored matchup. We went through it as well in OP10 where Usopp kind of rose up very high, and we had to learn how to kind of tech for him and play against him. And once you practice the matchup enough, or if you're tech for him at all, then the matchup becomes a lot more manageable for Bonnie and Green in general. So because of that, I'll maybe put him above Zoro. I'll put him here. I do think he's a little bit of a sleeper pick. Let's see if Cross can win a regional with him, and then if Cross wins a regional with him like he's saying he's doing, I'll put him up here in tier 1. So there you go, Cross. That's my promise to you, buddy. BY, I don't know, man. I don't know. I think we just put him in like tier 3 without Moria, and with Teach so high in the meta. I just can't. I actually think Shanks has a good matchup into BY too. I think people, I don't know. I think the BYs have a good like way to get around Shanks as well too. But without Raigo and without Moria, like, I don't know. I think Bonnie and Shanks are just going to be able to beat BY. Bonnie was always like 50-50 or slightly favored anyways, but without Raigo, I think Shanks is now probably favored, especially if they're running Roger for stuff like Blackbeard. I think BY has a hard time. So because of that, I'm going to put him pretty low down here. But this is another one where like people could prove me wrong. I'm just going to say that. Tier 1, or Pupu Luffy, I think is tier 1. I think he's definitely tier 1. In fact, I'm going to put him here. I'm going to put him here. I think, again, I think these are pretty unordered for the most part, but like if I had to make a tier list, I think I would maybe do something like this. For the if I had to do an ordering, I'm sorry, not a tier, I'm making a tier list. If I had to do an ordering, it would maybe be something like this. I think Purple Luffy is really strong. I do think his Teach matchup got a little bit worse in OP10, where Teach is like slightly more able to handle him, especially with stuff like Liberation, because if you go too wide, then they can get rid of 2 of your characters, because like Sangoro and Zoro are always the 6 and 4 original cost, 6 and 4, so it's like you can just get rid of them. But I do think, especially people are teching Gamma Knife right now, which is actually a really good tech for 10 cost Teach as well, because when you need to go for lethal, you minus 5k their Teach, and then as long as you're swinging 7k and above, you basically just deny them a free block. And if you have like a 5 cost kid on the board already, you get that Dawn back too. So I do think there are things, and then you're playing Gamma Knife for stuff like Bonnie anyways, and Gamma Knife is actually a really cool tool that like helps you just like get rid of characters on the board. Like if there's a 5 cost smoker, you reduce it by 5 and turn it down to a 3 because it was an 8 because of smoker leader effect. Like little things like that. I think people are gonna, once they kind of get used to playing Purple Luffy in the new format, I think, dude, like he could even end up here for like a couple weeks. He could end up at like number 1. I'm tempted. That's kind of crazy, but I think he still has a rough matchup against Bonnie, and I think for the most part kind of slightly favored matchup against Shanks. So he's kind of in a weird spot, where it seems like he has the potential to be number 1. That's like all I'm trying to say here. Maybe we'll just keep him there for now. Let's get through the rest. Sorry. Red Nika, the Star Deck 21, Luffy. I think he's kind of cool. He's pretty strong, but he's just like a less good Zoro at this point, probably. A very strong aggro deck though, and if the aggro decks are becoming stronger against stuff like Teach, then I think then he can maybe jump up a little bit, but not really sure. Red Ace, I think, is a spice. I think he's a spicy leader because I've been doing a little bit of testing for him in OP10 and OP11 as well, and kind of strong, kind of good. I think he has a good matchup in a Teach as well, as long as you're running a lot of the rush, especially if you run between 2 to 4 Rogers. You'd be surprised how hard Flame Emperor goes into getting into 0 life and then just playing Roger the next turn and just like always having the rush characters too. Really strong. I love this leader so much, and I do think there's some spice potential. I threw Robin in here. I'll put Robin at like tier 3 just because I do think she has a little bit of spunk. She has a little bit of potential. Kata Curry, I think, is like a low-key like tier 2 contender. Terrible matchup into Blackbeard and bad matchup into Pluffy and Bonnie, but I think he's a great matchup into Shanks. So if you see Shanks kind of jump up here and be like tier 1, like semi pseudo best deck in format kind of shit, like Katakuri could jump up. He really could. But for now, I think he's just like a spicy little outlier on tier 2. And then Buggy. I know you guys have the promo now, so we'll see. I do think like he's kind of strong against obviously any aggro deck, like strong against Dofi, strong against Zoro. Like I don't know where to place him exactly, so that's why I'm gonna keep him here. And actually, let me, I just thought of something. Let me see, where is he? Foxy. I'm gonna put Foxy in the spice as well, because anytime Floofy and Blackbeard are like really high up, I do think well, Dofi too, he's a good matchup against Dofi, but I think he's okay against Floofy as well. I think Foxy could be like a spicy little boy. He could be pretty strong. Let me just take a quick look. I think we can wrap things up here. Of course, there's leaders like Pudding and Carrot and Dragon and like Red Purple Uta, where I'm kind of just like sort of, and honestly Whitebeard I thought about adding in a spice, but I just can't. I don't want to just add and throw too many leaders in there just for the fun of it. I want to try and keep things as concise as possible. But this, you know, we'll even do this. I'll do this. If you put a gun to my head and ask me to order them right now, this is probably where I would order things. Maybe even do this. Yeah. Yep. Okay, it's all coming together. Okay. All right. This is it, I think. This is, at this very moment in time, this is where I would land on this tier list. Again, it's not really ordered. I tried my best, like gun put to my head, order them kind of a thing. I tried to put them in an order like this. I think these are essentially the best top 4 or 5 leaders right here. I think Usopp has a little bit of spice in him. I think he's not as bad as people say. Like losing the Dofi Lucci matchups or whatever, I think is like, that's not exactly what made him good in the first place. So I think it's just some of the other leaders that are at the top that kind of make it a little bit harder for him, which is why I couldn't put him in like tier 1 or anything. Lucci I think is obviously still strong. Dofi is still pretty strong. I think Zoro's got some spunk. He's got some life in him now. Boa's a little bit of a sleeper pick, and Uta is my hot take for the 1.5. Tier 2 are all leaders that I think have potential, but I'm not sure where they'll end up, so we're waiting on results in order for me to put them any higher. Tier 3 are leaders that I think are still very strong in their own right, but are currently in a bad position because of the top of the meta. And then these are spicy leaders that I think, depending on which leader, kind of takes that pseudo best deck in format position. If they have a very strong matchup into that leader, then they could as well kind of rise up in the ranks. But that's going to be it for me. Again, please take everything with a grain of salt. This is just for fun. This is a predictive tier list, so it's not going off of much data, and I'm kind of guessing at a lot of this stuff, but I think, like, you know, I don't think there's any crazy hot takes out there in this one. But let me know what you think. Let me know if you have a specific leader that you think should be like tier 1, because I think that's probably something you could probably argue for. Or if you think a leader shouldn't be, like, if I might be putting Usopp way too high, I might be giving Lucci too much credit. We'll see. Maybe Uta is a little bit of cope, not really sure. But that's gonna be it for me. So thank you guys for watching, if you watched all the way to the end, and as always, appreciate you if you like the video or subscribe to the channel. Check out the other videos on my channel. I am multi-streaming on Twitch and YouTube at the same time now, 2 to 3 days a week, so please check that out if you have time, and follow me on Twitter at FidulioTCG, all that jazz. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.